All right, listen. I love talking about the top of the league, trying to figure out who can stop the Buffalo Bills, Kansas City Chiefs without Tyreek Hill, the resurgent Dolphins. I love it. But looking at the bottom, too, is kind of cool. And Eric Edholm has done that, talking about reasons for hope for all 7 winless teams entering week 3. But Eric, I'll start with this. Yeah, you can say reasons for hope for all 7. But 2 of them this weekend are playing one another. And the season's on the line right here. We got Raiders at Titans, both teams 0-2. The loser, I'm going to say early in the AFC, see you later. Bye-bye. Thanks for coming. Nice parting gifts. We'll see you in 2023. How do you see this game? Like the stakes and the actual playing of it?
Yeah, the bottom dwellers bowl, if you will. Yeah, it's I mean, I look at the Raiders. Obviously, last week was insane. I mean, they were in control there for most of the contest, and then collapsed in spectacular fashion at the end. And early on, that pass rush really was harassing Kyler Murray, and then he's the whirling dervish that he is, pirouetting around for 20 and a half seconds on one play, and 14 on the next. And I think they just wore down a little bit. So I don't want to put too much into that one game, but the Titans were pretty. I really don't. It was. I don't think the Cardinals are a good football team, and so losing to them is going to look worse, I think, later in the season. But I'm not ready to use that game as the ammunition for, wow, the Raiders are terrible, right? I think they're in better shape right now than the Titans are. They were just non-competitive after the first, quarter and a half of that game against Buffalo. And, look, the Giants are a great story at 2-0, but the way they lost that game and looking kind of hopeless. And I said, look, Derrick Henry has, as amazing as he's been, he's the type of player you could see falling off a cliff. I don't know that we're there yet, but he's not the kind of guy who will just sort of ease off, and taper down. And, this is going to be from greats to, wow, can this guy still play whenever it does happen? So far, he's been off to a slow start. So we'll see. 2 former Patriots mainstays in McDaniels and Vrabel certainly need a win in this one. And you're right. I think the loser is in bad shape.
So which team do you think out of those 2, because I want to get to Cincinnati in a second. I'm interested in them because I have high hopes for Cincinnati this year after dismissing them most of last year. Yeah, I really got on board Super Bowl week. Every other step, I kept saying, they're not that good, not that good. They'll collapse. Right. But we'll get to Cincinnati in a second. But out of those 2 teams, out of the Titans, between the Titans and Raiders, which team do you think is better equipped to kind of self-correct from an 0-3 start? Is it the Titans because they're in a worse division?
Yeah, I think it has to be just because of that. I mean, right, you could argue that the Raiders are the better football team, and I'd certainly engage in that conversation, but you have to look at the landscape. You have to look at who you're playing. And right now, the AFC South is a morass. I mean, it's terrible. And to think that, the Colts are still in it. Technically, the Texans are still in it. I mean, we know the situation, right? This is going to end up looking a lot like a couple of years we've had recently with the NFC East, I suspect, where, in a 17-game schedule, you may be looking at an 8-9 or possibly a 10-win team winning the division. And that's, I think, the reality of the deal. Every team has major flaws, but we've seen the Titans do it last year, a little bit up and down, lost the playoff game at home, but, certainly won some big football games as well and won the most and rebounded from a tough home loss against Arizona a year ago. So, the formula's there. The AFC West, I think, is just way too tough for them to, for Las Vegas rather, to rebound from 0-3 and have to go swimming upstream against the Chargers and the Chiefs and everybody else.
All right, we saw this. I know you are a draft guru, and we saw a couple of years ago the first round class of 2021, 5 quarterbacks. Mac Jones was the 5th in the first round, and you had all these guys, and a lot of them struggled. I mean, Trey Lance, was in there a little bit last year, and he was okay, and Justin Fields was in there, and he had a couple of glimpses, but not great, and Trevor Lawrence, not great. Zach Wilson, injured. So we know that rookie quarterbacks, even though we talk a lot about them and we pine for them when things aren't going as expected, we know they're gonna struggle. I say all of that to get to Malik Willis. Is it too early? Is it unfair and / too early to make an example out of Ryan Tannehill? When you come with us, sit down, put Malik Willis in just for a jolt, or would that be a bigger disaster than what they have already?
Yeah, I mean, I thought there was an avenue for him to be used, kind of like, Colin Kaepernick was used with Alex Smith, right? Where, didn't play a lot as a rookie. I think it was the second year where Jim Harbaugh started kind of integrating him into the run game, letting him throw a little bit. They had a package of plays that he was especially good at, and it achieved two things, right? It gave the defense a couple of different looks to think about. I mean, yes, Ryan Tannehill can move. He's a good athlete. He could run, but different style player completely from Malik Willis. So it's a possibility that you could see something like that happen. Obviously, we saw him, once the game got out of hand up in Buffalo last week, but I didn't see that as a warning shot to Tannehill that he's going to get benched anytime soon. Now, that said, lose the Raiders. They've got the Colts after that, Washington, and then an early bye week. If they stumble through those next three games, who's to say that they can't use the bye to get Willis up to speed? I sensed a little bit of hesitation from Mike Vrabel when he was asked about Malik, and you can understand you want to pump the brakes and all that, but it's clear he needs a lot more exposure to NFL defenses to get up to speed. But are you going to have to make a decision on whether he's your guy at some point for next year? Absolutely, right? So if this is not a winning season, why kick the can down the road? Get him a look at some point. So let's see how the next three games look, and then the week 6 bye, and then all of a sudden you have a really interesting question. Can you go back? I don't know. Is it still a winnable division? Can Malik get you there? There are a lot of questions that come with that.
A lot of questions with the Cincinnati Bengals. We talked all last year about their offensive line. Then it appeared that they got some noticeable upgrades on the O-line. Meet the new line, right? Same as the old line. What's going on? What's going on with Cincinnati, and do you think they'll be able to turn this thing around?
Yeah, I can tell you that La'el Collins had a pretty rough game against his former team last week, and I don't want to put it all on one guy. I don't really think it's one guy holding the entire group back or anything like that, but it's clear they're not meshing. And there was even that little audio clip of Joe Burrow, Mr. Empty huddle at LSU. I mean, he would have the back motion out, and he'd have 4 other receivers and everything. He didn't want empty protection. He told Zach Taylor that. They caught it on the microphone during the broadcast. It was clear that he didn't trust his 5 to hold up against their 4, right? It wasn't like, Dallas was constantly blitzing, right? So, that's a pretty telling thing, I think, right now. You've got a 4th-round pick at one guard. I know Alex Kappa's, well regarded, but you have a new interior 3 essentially, plus the right tackle Collins, who didn't have a great game and looks to be somewhat physically limited. I don't know the situation there exactly, but just seeing how he moved, it was worrisome. So that said, I think a team with Burrow, Chase, Higgins, Boyd, Mixon, et cetera. You see Hayden Hurst get involved too. At some point, they're going to figure it out, and they could have won both games. Just look back at last year, too. They win the wild opener against the Vikings. It was crazy, played out very similar to the opener this year against the Steelers. And they go on the road and lose to their old friend Andy Dalton, the Bears, backup quarterback, same kind of situation that Cooper Rush and the Cowboys represented last year. So really, this year has started almost exactly the same as last year. The difference, 13 sacks instead of 6 or 7 or whatever it is. So they've got to figure that out, or otherwise – we're going to see Braden Allen. Do they want that? They want their backup quarterback? I don't think so.
Eric, we need you to crack the code. I've been asking the question all week. Maybe you can figure it out. Click. Here we go. How does one solve the Buffalo Bills? Offensively, how do you slow them down? Defensively, how do you take advantage of them?
Yeah, I mean, Gabe Davis misses a game and they win by more points in week 2, than they did in week 1. Again, and these are 2 really good teams that won, 20-something games between them combined. So, it's going to be a fascinating game this weekend. I don't think you want to necessarily get in a track meet. Now, maybe the Chiefs can pull that off. Maybe the Chargers can. A handful of other teams have that kind of firepower. But the thing about the Bills that's so impressive is that defensively, they've gotten after it, and they're doing it Leslie Frazier's style, 4-man rushes. They're not blitzing. They're getting there with, therefore, being better than the other team's offensive line. And that's a great formula to have. And he's going to get some assistant coach of the year mentions, and I think he'll get a lot of attention this season. I think the key is obviously to cover and cover well and drop 8 as much as you can, almost daring them to run the football. That's the one thing we really haven't, seen them do consistently at this point. Better, easier said than done, right? I'm sure every other team who's faced them has tried to do some version of that, but yeah, it's been impressive to watch them at the peak of their power so far.
It's like you ever, and I love like great singers, listening to great singers. I can't sing a lick, but there's a moment when a great singer, you're going along and okay, this is great. Then they just go to a level and you say, okay, they're like 2% of the planet can do that. And I think Josh Allen is in that category, along with maybe Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson. I think maybe Herbert too. There was a throw. We just showed it in the B-roll. Or he's just kind of going backwards and then just unleashes it, and it gets there in 2 seconds. And it travels 50 or 60 yards. And you just say, all right, we spent all week planning. We had a good defensive plan. There's nothing in the world you can do about that. I mean, is that the problem if you're a defense and you're dealing with Buffalo at any time, even if you get pressure on him, sometimes under pressure, it's almost like he's got 7 eyes and he can release a rocket and it could wind up in the end zone. I mean, it's just unfair.
In a spot where his guy can get it and the defender can't. I mean, those are the kind of throws that are virtually indefensible, right? I mean, if he can do that, I know exactly the throw you're talking about. His body was facing somewhere towards the sideline almost, and, kind of throwing across his body and able to throw it into traffic, into a tough spot, and get the ball where it needs to go. So, those are the plays that I think you just tip your cap to the superior talent. Lamar, okay, you did it, right? Justin Herbert, we've seen him make some ridiculous throws. Same thing with Mahomes. You just have to make it harder for them and hope that every now and then when they do improvise, when they do make those off script plays, that, their fundamentals just get away from a little bit, or, kind of the slow matriculation down the field. You'd rather die by 1,000 paper cuts in that case than with the stab to the heart, right? You'd rather have the 1 or 2 opportunities per drive to make a play on the ball, I think. So that's going to be the biggest thing, 2 high safeties, play it till they could run their way out of it. And I think that's going to be the biggest thing, because, it's hard. You want eyes on the football, but you also want to get tight coverage too. So it's another conundrum on what kind of coverage you actually play against these guys, because they can run, they can move, and that really taxes your pass rush and your secondary, I think.
Yeah, you're right. I think Allen had a throw like that in the preseason. Maybe it was against Denver. Where it looked like he was about to be tackled. And okay, you got hands on the guy. Okay, we're gonna bring him down. No, wait a minute, he's throwing. Okay, first of all, how was he able to throw, and how is he able to throw like that with big guys all around him? It's just crazy. But Eric, always great talking football with you, my friend. Please stop by. We will break down on Sunday night. We're gonna spend an hour on who won the 0-2 Bowl.
Yes.
Raiders, Titans. That's the game of the weekend. That's the undercard.
Forget Dolphins, Bills. Forget Bucks, Packers. No. That's the one you want to tune in for, Raiders, right? I'm with you, man. I'm an 0-2 guy.
That is it. All right, Eric. Appreciate you.
Take it easy, buddy.
Hey, thanks for watching Brother from Another on YouTube. Make sure you hit subscribe before you leave, and be sure to watch us 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time on Peacock. Appreciate you.